Welcome to the Education Innovators Podcast. I'm Eric Byron, and it is my privilege to host this show where I get to talk to folks from all over the world who are education thought leaders and innovators. We'll hear inspiring stories from educators, EdTech founders, AI experts, and others who are fearlessly innovating and delivering unique learning experiences. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. Call it karma or destiny or finding your purpose in life. Some of us are fortunate that when we're young, we realize we're in the wrong place or in the wrong job and we pivot. My guest this week is Tang. Alan found his purpose, and you're going to love his story.
I say this to parents that if you don't notice something change in the first 3 weeks, we've done something wrong, because we see it in the classes that the kids become more confident, they become more curious, and parents email us typically after 3-4 weeks saying, I noticed that my son is more confident, I noticed that my daughter's making friends easier, I noticed that my daughter is using more inclusive language, things that actually matter.
You don't have to solve all the problems. Alan shows us that you can get great reward and have enormous impact just by helping kids improve their confidence and emotional intelligence. Keep listening. Alan Tang, welcome to the Education Innovators Podcast. So, first of all, let me give a little background on you so our guests know who we're talking with today. So you believe education can make the world a better place. Amen to that. You're a founder and CEO of CoLab, an online program that uses games, discussions, and escape rooms to teach kids skills for the modern world. You found your way through this, a path that actually included, 6 years in corporate finance and the renewable energy field, and then spent some time as a chef of London's top restaurants. So, but then you worked in some startups, you called a fractional chief of staff, and then you make a transition finally into the education industry with a job with Synthesis, which is an experimental school at SpaceX. So welcome to the show.
Eric, thank you for having me. I am a huge fan. I listened to what you were talking to Mark Delora about, and there were just some really fascinating insights, and I'm glad to have a chance to give my thoughts.
Well, great. I'm so glad to have you on. This is going to be fun. And so just to loosen up a little bit, I want to ask you about skateboarding. So I saw that you started skateboarding, and this is fascinating to me. You're, I guess, in your 30s, and now you're starting skateboarding, which is a little later than most people would. But so what's your biggest trick, and who's teaching you?
So it's a version of skateboarding called surf skating. So the wheels are very loose and it mimics surfing on land. It means it's much wobbly, higher chance of falling off. And I've always wanted to do it. I wanted to do it since the beginning of COVID, but I just kept putting it off. And one morning I woke up and said, look, if you keep doing this, you're never going to take that risk. You're never going to take that step. And I felt that in my day to day, I was becoming more, there was just too much structure. I didn't have that randomness that you have from going to the office or doing other things. I wanted to have that fear almost. So I jumped on a skateboard, a surf skate, and I've just been learning it. I'm recently going on ramps, so going up and down these ramps, training up to go into a bowl, which is probably the scariest thing you can do on a skateboard, because it's weird. Your body is telling you, don't lean forward, lean back. You're going to hurt yourself if you lean forward. But actually, the reality is if you lean forward and you commit to it, you don't get hurt. But if you lean back, you'll fall over. So that's kind of a really great analogy, I think, for life. Just go fill in, commit to it, and see what happens.
Exactly why I asked the question, because I can tell you're kind of a rebel guy and all in, right? This is exactly right. And I love that about you. So there's some other things about your story here that I think, reflect this, right? This fact that you quit a job in finance because you didn't find it fulfilling, right? And then you went on to become a chef, and then you transitioned into education at Synthesis. But I'm kind of wondering, I also have the the history of changing jobs multiple times. So, was there a moment for you? I'm guessing that when you got to Synthesis, you were still kind of looking for your purpose, if you will. But I'm wondering if there was like a lightning bolt moment when you were at Synthesis and you just said, "Oh, I found my purpose."
There's a bit of backstory to this. So my parents wanted me to be a doctor, be a lawyer, or be an accountant, and I knew I didn't want to be a lawyer. I'm not great with blood, so couldn't be a doctor. So the accountant was that route, or investment banker. Tried investment banking, didn't quite like it. Went for an accountant route, and did all the things that I was meant to do. So, getting good grades, getting the qualification, getting a good job. I was a director at 24, and the sort of pinnacle that my parents wanted me to achieve was to buy a house, to buy multiple property, and to go from there. I was 25. I bought a house, I bought a flat, and I felt really hollow. I felt like, okay, what next? And that was, if you talk about pinnacle moments, that for me was a moment that stood out. It made me realize that actually there is so much more to life than just accumulating wealth and, just working and
Yeah.
selling your hours for your brain points for money. So I didn't tell my parents. I quit. I became a chef, much to their dismay. I became a chef for 3 years. And that was another pivotal moment because actually it told me that anything is possible. If I can go from no culinary background, good home cook, but no experience of being in the commercial kitchen, being able to develop the skills, be able to adapt, be able to become a sous chef within six months, anything was possible. And I took that mindset with me from there on in. And that really opened more and more doors. And what I find and what I tell a lot of people is that actually if you try something and it doesn't work, don't take it as a failure, take it as a learning and actually embrace that. And the more you do that, the more people you meet, bigger the network gets, the more skills you accumulate. And actually that culminates into something that I don't believe in destiny, but I do believe that something was forcing me down this route to get the skills I needed to start CoLab. So Synthesis is the greatest example. I didn't apply for a job there. I got approached on Twitter. They said, send in a video interview of your favorite game. I was like, okay, great. This is cool. If you asked me 10 years ago if I would work in education, the answer would have been absolutely not. But I thought, okay, why not? Sounds interesting. Attended this session, which was essentially an assessment center where you play the Synthesis games and they see how you react, how you deal with other people, how you facilitate the session. Got offered the job, and I was there for 2.5 years. And that experience was really magical. You talk about finding your purpose, finding a company that you want to work for forever. That was it. Helping kids be the best version of themselves, using games as that vehicle to do that. Uh, Amazing culture in the company. People were very driven, very smart, but also very innovative. And they cared about teamwork. They cared about making decisions together. It was everything I wanted in the company. And I could honestly say that I would work there for free for the rest of my life. Like that was the only company I felt that ever. They then pivoted to an AI tutor model, which I think has there is a lot of need for something like that because it's scalable, it's efficient, it's effective. But for me, education needs a human touch. I think education needs to not just show kids, the hard skills, the technical skills, but you also need to help them, inspire them. You need to model behavior to them. You need to give them that curiosity that maybe, an AI tutor couldn't yet do. Maybe in the future, but at the moment, I don't think they can do that. Because if I think back to my education, I chose to study economics because my economics teacher introduced me to game theory and the prisoner's dilemma and all this stuff about opportunity cost. I couldn't stop reading about it,
Hmm.
And I don't think I would have studied economics otherwise.
Yeah. So very interesting. There's so many correlations between your story and my story. And it's not about me, but just briefly, at 24, I ran off and joined the circus. So I get it, right? I was in the family business, so and that was the funeral business. So
Mhm.
I went from working in a funeral home to running off to the circus and find my way in life. And hence the juggling videos you'll see on my channel. I still juggle. And yes, it was a life-changing thing where I just said, I got to go have this adventure. I got to go do this. This is who I am. And anyway,
Eric,
so
if you don't mind me asking, like, why, A, why the circus, and B, how did you deal with the family side? Because I imagine they were very much against it. They didn't want you to do it. They knew it wasn't the right choice for you. How did you navigate that?
well, first of all, I did tell my dad. So I was fourth generation, and it was hard. My dad cried. I mean, it was one of those moments in life, but I was really, really blessed in that they kind of understood, right? And the way I delivered it to them was I said, I just worry that I've been given this opportunity. Somebody approached me and said, we're putting together this show. It's a circus style show. We've seen you juggle, we'd love to have you in the show. Here's an invitation, to come out and tour with us. And I just said to my dad, I said, if I don't do this, I think I'm going to regret it the rest of my life that I didn't go have that adventure. I'm only 24,
Mhm.
and I'm working in a funeral home. This is not ideal environment for a 24-year-old. It's really hard dating. You tell girls what you do and poof, they're gone. It's like, so anyway, I went off and I did it. It was a train wreck. The show went bankrupt, and I came back a few weeks later, kind of tail between my legs, and my parents took me back in and said, "Okay, you had your adventure. What's next?" And I said, "You know what? I'm going to Disney World." I put everything I could get in my car and I drove south. I was living in Massachusetts at the time, not New England, and yeah, just said, I still haven't found myself yet. I haven't figured out what it is, but it's not here. And so yes, I went south, didn't have a place to live, didn't have a job, didn't know anybody in Orlando, but I went and I ended up working at Disney for 11 years. And later in my life, my dad did sit me down and say, you made the right call. You followed your heart and you went and did you instead of doing what I would have had you do because it was important to me, but you did what was important to you. And, that was great. I mean, that was really important. Having family that supports you, even when they don't think you're making a good decision, is
But
really
but it
important.
plays on that point of you almost have to make that choice, that you have to have the agency to make that choice and make that mistake. I call it a mistake, but it wasn't a mistake to make that choice, because that actually, if you don't, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life. You're going to think, what if, what if, what if? And actually, it probably opened a lot of doors for you. It probably led to where you are now. It probably was kickstarted something.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, 11 years at Disney. In fact, it was at Disney where I learned technology. I crossed over from entertainment into tech. So you never know what life is going to bring, but, and I guess this is the point of this whole thing is you got to be willing to go try. And this is something I hope comes across in all of my podcast episodes is that the folks who are on my show very often are the people who are risk takers. They see something and they just go, I'm not going to wait for somebody else to go do this and fix this problem. I'm going to find a way, sometimes at great personal sacrifice to their own careers and money. And, being an entrepreneur is hard. It is very hard to be successful at this. So, all right, well, let's go on here. I want to talk more about purpose. I think that this is kind of a common theme here in your life and in my life, and why I do this podcast. We're all kind of we find a purpose here in education and trying to help solve some problems, I think. So, well, first of all, I want to kind of ask about your attitude, in terms of starting a company of your own, CoLab. Would you consider yourself to be a disruptor, that you're hoping to have some kind of ripple effect that disrupts traditional education?
So I wouldn't say that we are, you know, pushing against or fighting against traditional education. I think what we're trying to do is supplement it, because how I see it is that the ultimate beneficiary of everything that people do in education should be the students, right? And I feel that sometimes EdTech platforms are saying, it's us versus them, but actually it should be about building an ecosystem that gives students and their families choice, that gives them different things to focus on, because actually there is so much out there. It's such a big space, and there is no one size fits all, right? Just because traditional education works for someone doesn't mean it works for everyone, and vice versa. So I would say that actually what we're trying to do is to almost build those bridges, build the ecosystem, and kickstart something that actually allows that freedom to explore different things in the space, that ability to actually teach kids skills that are relevant in life, right? So I think every society, every community requires, basics, maths, English, science. Like you need that because that's what our society is built on. But then we started CoLab because we felt that a lot of kids going from college, going from university into the world of work just weren't ready, right? Didn't understand how to do their, even basics like, okay, how do you host a meeting? What are the social norms? How do you work in a team? How do you break down these problems? What sort of questions to ask? You know, I think that these kids, these graduates have learned these skills through a sort of rote learning approach, but they don't know how to apply it in different scenarios. And what we're trying to do really, if I break down what we're trying to do at CoLab, is not so much, you know, give you X, Y, and Z skills. It's probably to give you the confidence and curiosity to explore and just push that boundary a little bit. Because if we talk about innovation, I guess Eric, this is what your podcast is all about. If you follow what's been done before you, you're never going to develop something new. Is incredibly hard. But what if you were to just push that boundary a little bit and see actually no one's ever connected this idea and this idea. Could we make that happen? And this is where innovation really starts.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. So there was an interesting description of CoLab that came up in one of the things my research on you was a description of CoLab as being Pokemon meets Sherlock Holmes. Explain that to us.
It,
Tell us about CoLab and why that works as a description.
I mean, it makes me laugh every time I see it because that's what a parent described this as. So we intentionally wanted to make CoLab an immersive experience that kids really enjoyed. I think the biggest challenge when working with, children between the ages of 7 to 14 is that engagement piece, right? They already have so much school, so much learning, so much extracurricular activities. How can we make them want to do this? And the world that we've built is a 2D world, pixel art orientated, open world that they can explore anywhere and everywhere. And we give the kids agency to choose what challenge. So our challenge is broken up into games, discussions, and escape rooms, and the kids can go and choose which one they want to do this week and what they want to focus on. And through that process, they start to develop, their own voting mechanisms, their own ways of communicating, their own ways to make a decision. And that kind of starts to build that curiosity, and they start to have to think, okay, well, if we do this, let's make an agreement to actually do this one next week. And you just start to see them developing this sort of ability to negotiate, the ability to work as a team. And the Sherlock Holmes reference is all about the clues that we litter around, not just in the classroom, but also in the activities that they have to figure out. One of our challenges is an escape room, and it's in this castle, and there are 12 kids in this room, and they're in this dungeon, and they need to escape, but they need to escape together. And littered throughout this dungeon are clues about how to get out, what you have to do, what you should avoid. But there are also guards listed around, and you're this avatar, you're walking around with your mates, you're exploring, and then one of you finds a guard and you get confronted by the guard, you get sent back to the start. And the only rule we give the kids in this challenge, we're not teaching, we're facilitating. The only rule we give is if one of you gets caught, all of you have to get caught and you get sent back to the start. We built this in intentionally because we wanted the kids to learn how to work together, how to make decisions, how to manage their impulses, but also how to manage their emotions. When this happens 5 times, 10 times, fine, no worries. We can live with it. It happens 20 times, 30 times, and it's the same student doing it. You get frustrated, you get irritated, you start to want to point fingers. And this is where us, the facilitators, jump in. We say, what's more important here? Is it to beat the challenge, or is it to figure out who to blame? Now, it doesn't really matter what the student says afterwards, right? It really doesn't. What matters is that they experience what happens after they say a certain thing. So if they blame someone and the conversation goes south, they recognize not to do that. Next time there's a better way to navigating that. And they say something that actually diffuses the situation. They recognize that actually this is something I can use in the rest of my life. because it's a situation that we're going to experience hundreds and hundreds of times in our lifetime.
Yeah. So how long does a game take like this? How long does it take them to escape the dungeon?
So we build our challenges into sort of 8-week sprints, you can call them. And the idea is that in that 8 weeks, you can play any of the 3 challenges or all 3 of them. And it's up to you whether you beat them or not. It's not so much about the destination, it's more about the journey of learning. But typically a challenge could take 2 to 3 weeks. But it's not linear, right? Just because, some groups might be amazing at problem solving, but they might be rubbish at communication. So actually we let them choose what to struggle with, what to engage with, because they can start to work on their weaknesses. And because we give these students and their parents feedback every week, they start to recognize, actually, I want to work on this because this is why I'm here.
Hmm. Interesting. So they come in like once a week for a couple of hours. Is that
90 minutes. So
90 minutes?
intentionally once a week and intentionally only 90 minutes because we recognize that screen time is an issue and we don't want this to be an addiction, right? You look at kids who are playing Roblox and Minecraft and all the other sort of programs, really great. They're great at building community, great at problem solving, great at learning how to do certain things. But as an adult, you're staring at a screen, 15, 16 hours a day on your phone, on your laptop. Kids should be kids. They should be outside learning how to ride a bike, how to climb a tree, how to skateboard. There are other things outside that we think that kids should also be learning when they're still, in that playful, fun environment where you can take that risk. And I think that this is what we want to promote, that balance of, okay, there is online education and then there's fun things as well, but you should also be doing other things to build that balance and become a well-rounded individual.
Okay. Is there any activity or anything that you encourage them to do in between that helps build their skills and or get them to exhibit the behaviors you're hoping they learn through the play?
So one of the ideas we had was almost this sort of RPG role-playing game sort of model, right? We send the parents an email every week to say, this is what the group did really well, this is what the group could work on, and these are the things that we would suggest, like those sort of questions you can ask at the dinner table, in the car, on the way to school, just to get the kids thinking. What we do every month is that we send a personalized email to the parents to say, okay, Eric, you're really great at this, in the past month, we think you can work on this, and this is what we saw. Your secret mission for the following month is this. So it could be you are the you are the captain, and your job is to make sure that everyone's aligned. Your job is maybe the instigator, and you actually have to get the quieter voices to speak up. Your job might be the question master, and your job is to ask questions. And they're all targeted because we want the kids to focus on a particular skill. And what we see is that once you give them that role, and because this is a very much like an avatar 2D based world, it's not you, it's your avatar. They exhibit that confidence to try and ask those questions and play that role. And without them knowing, they start to develop that skill set, which is amazing because these kids, maybe they're really quiet, they start to develop that voice. Maybe they dominate the conversation, they take a step back and they become that leader, that silent leader. And this is what we're here for, right? We're trying to help unlock the potential in these kids.
Oh, this is awesome. I love it. It's a great mechanism. And I do love the fact that you kind of manage the amount of time that these kids are going to play this. Because I also think that sometimes, well, they talk about scarcity, right? Driving, economy. And so by limiting the amount of time, if they're really having fun, it makes them want to come back, right? You generate that desire. Whereas if they could just play unlimited, they get tired of it, right? At some point. So yeah, that's cool. I want to, so funny story. I actually co-founded a startup also called CoLab, but ours was spelled with a Q. So it was QOLLAB, but pronounced CoLab. And it was really a combination of the word question and collaboration. But I realized as you were talking there, you commented about asking questions, right? And getting to the question. The whole premise of what we were trying to do was an emphasis on questions, right? We've always believed that it's not as important to have the answer as to ask the right question, right? Because you could be answering the wrong question and then it doesn't matter, right? So, but how do we get to the right question is a process that I think, well, again, right? We don't really teach this. How do you get to really, really good questions? How do you ask great questions? And so anyway, we started building a platform that was designed to help people really focus on questions and how do I get the right question, worry about the answer later. Let's get the right question. And we failed. The startup didn't really go anywhere. People thought it was interesting, but they didn't want to use the tool. Anyway, that happens. But talk to me about the importance of questions in your version of CoLab. How much do you emphasize that and this skill of being able to figure out what questions I need to ask?
So the premise of CoLab is essentially that we're not teachers, we're facilitators, right? We're not there to say A squared plus B squared equals C squared. We want the kids to figure that out. So the whole way we teach and we facilitate is through Socratic questioning. We're answering questions with a question. So, a student might say, how do I play this? What do you see? I see these buttons. What do they do? What's your hypothesis? And what the kids start to pick up is that actually they can figure things out, but they also start to have this curiosity of trying things out. And this ties into one of the biggest bugbears I have with the modern education system is that you're almost forcing these kids for perfection. It's always about 100%. It's always about getting an A. It's always about doing it right the first time. You then work in the startup world, and this is what I learned the hard way. You work in the startup world, you make a mistake, and it's the best way to learn. So we should be encouraging kids and people in general to make, to do experiments, to do hypotheses, to test your hypotheses, and really figure out, okay, does this work? And if it does, let's go big, focus on that, right? And moving, creating this safe environment for these children in our classes to make these mistakes, to test these things out is perfect because you see their growth just going so much faster than what we'd normally see. And that's why we keep asking these questions because, like you said, also in a real world situation, you're not going to know the answer straight away. You're not going to know everything. But if you can ask the right questions, whether it's in an interview, whether it's trying to do an audit, whether it's trying to figure out what's the cause of this problem, asking the right questions can start to unlock the solution.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a real skill because if you don't know how to ask a question, you can come across as aggressive. You can come across as, just asking yes or no questions doesn't help.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I think fascinating, and it sounds like it's part of what you're developing there is this ability also, it's not just, first you got to kind of have the question, but then you also have to have that ability to kind of go, all right, we don't have enough information. How do I find the answer now? So I've got a good question, but I may have to go poke and prod and experiment and test, which drives action, right? Which I think is really, really so critical in the mindset of these kids. Because as you pointed out, right, we kind of, in traditional education, we pound this fear of failure into them, right? But it's only through failure really that you get the answers, right? I got to find things that don't work in order to find the thing that does work, right? So I hope that that's again part of what you're seeing there is with these kids is that they become less fearful and of doing something wrong, right? Because all right, I got caught. We're all back to square one again. Let's go. But I learned something, right? We learned don't go there, right? Don't pull that handle because that one leads to getting caught, right? So now we know.
And just it's really funny you say this because I've ran that challenge with 6 groups of kids, and we've also run it with I think probably 6 groups of adults. The kids can beat that challenge in 1.5 to 2 weeks. The adults, have a guess. How long do you reckon it takes them?
Oh, I don't know, 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're so worried about making a mistake. They're so worried about almost overthinking everything that one of the clues is 2 steps forward, 1 step back. So they're thinking maybe in this part we have to walk 2 steps forward and 1 step back. There's nothing like that in there. But they're so overanalyzing it that actually they don't want to try things out. And you see this again and again and again. I think someone did an experiment where you have to build a paper tower, and it's how high can you make it? And the kids are given the same tools as the adults, but the adults plan and think, and the kids just experiment, experiment, experiment. And actually, by the end of it, the kids have a stable tower that's, 4 feet tall, and the adults have one which is 1 foot tall.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's classic because we beat this stuff out of, kids. By the time we get them through high school, they're terrified of failure in most cases. And then we get them into industry, right? We get them into business in a job and we try to beat that out of them again. It's it's it doesn't work. Well, I
No,
come from the game industry, right? I worked at, EA making games, and this was, I mean, absolutely a culture thing. There was go, try, do, fail. We want you to try and do crazy things because, that's how we're going to innovate and do something really awesome, in a
mhm.
game with the design is if we think outside the box, and you can't think outside the box if you're, cautiously, afraid to do something really, really new.
And with that, you kind of build this resilience, right? If you've made a mistake once, okay, can I step back up? Can I go again and try again without giving up? I think that resilience is super powerful. There is a point here actually that I think you talked about sort of innovating and thinking outside the box. What are your thoughts on sort of having this interdisciplinary mindset, hiring people that are different to you, hiring people from different backgrounds?
Oh, it's absolutely crucial. Yeah, if you hire a bunch of people who think the same way you think, then, yes, your ideas are going to be lame, right? You really need people who challenge your thinking and your perspective and come at it differently. And yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of diversity and, and not just about, you know, diversity for me is about perspective. It's not about skin color or anything, right? It's about people who have different experiences than me and can come at something differently, right? And I was used to say, as a boss, if I throw an idea out there, I want you to tell me I'm crazy, right? Do not just go execute on my idea because you're the boss, Eric, and you said, suggested something. No, do not go do what I said because I'm probably wrong, right? I'm just throwing stuff out there, trying to set the example that it's okay to just throw something out there and
Mhm.
half-baked whatever, because it may hopefully stimulate somebody else to go, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that. If we take that and combine it with this idea, now we may have something, right? And so yes, that was always part of my MO as a boss was I want ideas, throw things out there. Don't worry about, being right, being wrong, having it fully figured out. Just throw ideas out. And that's when real, collaboration and really great ideas come from is when, and almost always it's a building process, right? It's not that, you collect 10 ideas from different people and one of them is the winner. Almost always the best ideas are the additive ones where somebody threw something out and somebody else went, oh, I can work with that. Let's also do this, right? And they add on to it, right? They make that idea better. And then somebody else comes in and goes, oh, yeah, yeah. And then we could do this, right? And people start getting excited and realize, oh, we're building on what was kind of a half-baked idea, but other people can now innovate around that concept and make it better and better. So,
I mean, you make it sound really easy, but it also requires the right culture, right? It requires you
yeah.
to give feedback the right way. You can't just be like, your idea sucks. It's, I love that idea. How about we add this to it? And doing it so that actually you're focusing on the problem, not the person, which again is a skill.
Yes, it is. A phrase I learned at Disney so many years ago that has stuck with me all the way through my career was something we called focus on issue, not tissue. So if something is wrong, right, you don't go say, Alan, you screwed up, right? You say, Alan, we have an issue,
Mhm.
right? And let's focus on the issue, right? The issue is, this thing didn't work out well. Okay. So you're not saying that you screwed up, but I'm saying I now have an issue. How do we fix it? Right. So issue, not tissue, right? You never go after the person, you go after the impact of whatever problem, we're facing, not throwing blame, just saying, yeah, there's a problem here and we need to put our heads together and solve it. Right.
That's
So yeah.
a great phrase. I'm gonna steal that.
Oh, good. Good, good. Yeah. Somebody gave it to me, I don't know, 30 years ago, something like that. And yeah, I still use it too. It's a great principle of, yes, how to collaborate, right? People
Yeah.
make mistakes and screw up, and, you can attack the person or you can just go after the problem. Go after the problem. Always ends up better. All right. So I ask almost all of my guests something around this question. So, how do you know it's working, right? So, how do you measure success in CoLab?
I say this to parents that if you don't notice something change in the first 3 weeks, we've done something wrong because we see it in the classes that the kids become more confident, they become more curious, and parents email us typically after 3, 4 weeks saying, I noticed that my son is more confident. I noticed that my daughter's making friends easier. I noticed that my daughter is using more inclusive language, things that actually matter, and they noticed it at school, at the dinner table, on the way to school, in the car. And this is really the crux of it, right? Just because I say on a piece of paper or on an email, oh, Eric is a better communicator, that means nothing unless it actually translates into the real world situation. So that's our emphasis, and we do that a lot of that through the feedback, the emails, the input, the online meetings we have with the parents, the teacher parent meetings, because the original idea was we wanted to measure this right in the background with a tool like a social listening tool to say, okay, how many times has Eric spoken, in this conversation? How many times has Eric used someone's name? How many times has Eric interrupted someone? And that data is great, but actually when we compared that data to what actually the session was like, two separate things. Just because you speak a lot does not mean you're a good communicator. Just because you use someone's name a lot, again, doesn't mean you're a good communicator. And the biggest thing was actually when the kids said to us, we don't want this to feel like school. We don't want this to feel like a big brother environment. We want to be ourselves. And they actually asked us for that. And so we ended up scrapping that social listening tool because really our job is not to just measure and grade you and give you a score because you can't really score someone's communication skill. It's all relative. Our
Mhm.
job is to actually make that skill part of you and a foundational skill that you have for the rest of your life. So it's about using it not just in this session, but throughout. And this is why we have those questions and activities at the end, for each week. It's why we have those personalized emails. It's why we have those personalized missions. It's because it starts to become part of who you are. And then it starts to become the skill that you keep using. And honestly, I say this to parents, if you aren't noticing any of this within the first couple of weeks, come back to us. We'll give you a refund because really we haven't done it properly. And thankfully, we haven't had that, right? All the parents are been very, very grateful that the parents have been real champions of us. Some parents ask us, can you write my daughter, my son, a recommendation letter for their school? They trust us because they know that we care about the kids, that we want to help them achieve that potential. And yeah, that's why we're here.
It's awesome. And you made me think of another one of my favorite phrases. I'm just full of like wisdom or something today. Measure outcomes, not output, right? So yes, how much I talk is an output.
Mhm.
The outcome is, right, did I say something of value? And so, and value that you were then able to use, right? So, and I think this is also a problem with traditional education, right? We focus a lot on output, right?
Mhm.
Your ability to pass a test, right? Your skill in passing exams is not, it's not an outcome really. That's still output, right? Your score on an exam is an output. It's not an outcome. An outcome is when I have developed that person, right?
Mhm.
So they can go do something with the skills they got, right? The outcome is what they do with it, not the fact that they got a grade, right? Or they got a score. So give me some
Just
more examples of outcomes, right? Kids, stories of kids or families that have come back and just said, this was kind of, I mean, really important for us.
absolutely. I guess just before jumping into that, you said something there all about outcomes, right? And I think some of this was inspired by my experience of interviewing at Cambridge University, right? So I was told that they only cared about my grades, they cared about what I knew, and they cared about, how I say that in an interview. I turn up to the interview and they're starting to record and they say, Alan, thanks so much for being here. Here are 6 graphs on this table. Choose one and talk about it. I haven't seen any of these graphs in my life. I didn't know what they were. And they were like, figure it out. And, I had to decipher and break everything down and sort of realize, okay, well, this is what I think, this is why, this is, what I think this graph shows. They weren't looking for an outcome, like an output. They were looking for an outcome. They were looking to see if I could break down the problem, if I could articulate it well, if I could handle the pressure. And at the end, they offered me a place. I ended up not taking it for other reasons. But, I think that is a perfect example. I know a lot of parents that I speak to want their kids to go to an Oxbridge, an Ivy League school. You could study all you want, but really what these schools are looking for is someone who has that special sauce, that extra thing. And the only way you can have that is through developing these skills from a younger age. So being able to communicate, being able to collaborate, being able to be a leader, being able to, use critical thinking, have good emotional intelligence, have empathy. These are things that really matter. And, I'll give you an example. You asked about a few examples. One of our students I think his IQ is 150 plus, like super smart. He's 9 years old. And in the first session that we ever had with him, they had to go through a maze and they had to navigate through a maze as a group. We look, 5 minutes into the session and all the other students are still talking, thinking about, okay, how to plan this, how to navigate this. This student is already at the end. He's found his way through it, but he's there on his own. He's a lone wolf. And we spent the next 3-4 weeks coaching him, giving personalized feedback to the parent and him, and really helping him become more of a team player. In that same challenge with the dungeon and the escape room and getting sent back to the start, he was the one telling the team, we have to stick together. He was the one where if someone was lost, he would go back and find them. He was the one that was saying, actually, let's decide together which door to go through. Let's decide how we get there. He was showing that leadership, but also that empathy to go back for someone.
Mm.
I'll be honest, I didn't think that was possible. At the start of that journey, I didn't think it was possible because he was so focused on me and my results and where I come compared to my peers. That transformation was what, over 6 weeks? And I just thought, wow,
Yeah.
absolutely wow. It's
Well, no,
just it's a
yeah. No, that is a great story. I've worked with some people who were, truly genius level, and quite often, yeah, they're socially inept. They have some real social challenges because they just roll right over people of lesser intelligence, and yeah. Anyway, they focus on the end, right? I can get there. I don't need you. I'm smart enough. I'll just go. And good luck keeping up with me. I have,
and there's that sense of frustration they have, right? That you're not keeping up with them because their brain is going at twice, 3 times. But someone said this to me once and it's really stuck. People don't remember the outcome of a certain situation, right? What they remember is how you acted in that situation. And really, in the world of work, in the world of life, if you want to have friends, if you want to have, a good life, you want to get promoted, it's not about how good you are at that job, at, solving that problem. It's about how you are as a person.
yeah,
And, there are people that I've seen who maybe aren't the best at their job, but they're very good with people, with clients, with teams. And they're the ones that get promoted over everyone else because people recognize and value this skill. So it's always been a surprise to me that it's not something that we teach intentionally at schools
yeah,
because that emotional intelligence, that ability to come across well is probably one of the best skills you can learn.
yeah. No, it's funny. It actually made me think of a story too. There was a guy I worked with who was, I mean, he was off the charts. This guy was just absolutely brilliant, but he was weird, right? And and most people just didn't want to work with this guy because he was just an oddball guy. He would just these random things would come out of his mouth and be just like, where did that come from? But you watched him work, and the man was just unbelievable. Anyway, but one of the funny things was, so I was one of the few people who I would go and talk with this guy. I would just sit there. I was just fascinated, watching him. You know, he was in the tech field and an engineer, but just absolutely brilliant, 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 brilliant. But he realized that I was one of the few people who kind of put up with him and liked him. And I remember one day we were in an elevator going to a meeting, and I'm just standing there next to him in the elevator, and all of a sudden he just held my hand. He was like, I'm going into a scary place, Eric, because these people don't like me. They all think I'm weird. He didn't say any of this, but he just like held my hand, like, you're my friend. And I trust you that you're going to be nice to me when the rest of these people are probably, they don't get me. And so yes, sometimes, and he helped me solve some problems I never could have solved on my own because I could go to him and say, Joe, I can't figure this thing out. And he'd go, yeah, there you go. There's the answer. And you go, oh, that took you seconds. I've been working on this for hours.
But
But
it's
yeah,
also amazing that you knew how to work with him. And I think this is something that, we try and promote in our classes, that there are going to be people from different backgrounds, different, you know, different locations, different, levels of intelligence. Your job is really to adapt and be able to work with all of them because that's what life is going to be like. That's what life's going to throw at you.
yeah,
I love how you had that empathy, that patience to work with someone like that because it can be hard, right? It can be a real test of your patience. And
yeah.
I also love that you actually were able to form that friendship because imagine for Joe, your friend, it was probably life changing for him. He probably didn't have that many friends.
Well, I don't know if it was life changing for him, but it was memorable for me. And anyway, yeah, I'm not even sure where he is now. That was 20 years ago, and I think he ended up at Microsoft. I think he ended up going to work for them. Probably invented something that, you know, maybe AI, who knows? He's one of those guys. Anyway, all right, let's get back to our discussion here, back on topic. So, well, let's talk about vision, right? So where do you want to see CoLab go? So kind of give us a status, kind of, how many folks, students, kids, families have you impacted already? Where do you see this going in the next 5 years? And, where do you think, you know, traditional education is going to be in 5 years? Not necessarily that you're going to disrupt it, but it's going to be disrupted, I think. I'm curious what your vision is there.
So the vision for CoLab has always been the same, right? Help kids be the best version of themselves, teaching them these durable skills that can help them throughout life. That's always been the vision. We've always been a social impact business. We're not doing this for money. We've been approached by VCs, we've been approached by Stanford. We said no because really the money that we make goes towards scholarships for other kids, or we put it back into the system to help make it better. We aren't here like a lot of other companies just to make a load of money, and that means that actually the thing that we really care about is the student experience. Are you learning? Are you having fun? If we're not, we're gonna scrap what we're doing and just move on. And there's something that, when you were talking to Mark in your earlier episode, this really resonated. It's really easy to make something that's fun. It's really easy to make something that's educational, but to combine the two, it's so hard. And we have thrown away and discarded so many games, discussions, and escape rooms because for us, it wasn't at the level we wanted. And it goes back to that point. Because we're not VC funded, because we're not trying to grow rapidly, it's always going to be about that student experience. And, to give you numbers, we're 180 odd kids from around the world. We are piloting in 5 schools now, which is really great. It was never the vision to work with schools, but actually working with schools does one thing. Everyone has said don't work with schools because it's long sales cycles. You have lots of paperwork. Schools don't really have the resource all the time for something like this. But actually, if you can work with one school, a respected school, and they take up something like this, it sends such a strong message to parents to say that social emotional learning is important.
Mm.
And we see that, right? The one school that we are working with in the UK, really well respected school. As soon as I even mention that we're working with this school, the other school's like, yeah, where do I sign up? And I think
Yeah.
that can have a cascading effect, which ultimately is the goal, right? Can we help change the narrative around education, moving away from just grades towards developing these well-rounded individuals that can make a difference in the world? You know, if we encourage 1,000 kids to yeah, be innovators and start building in any industry, that's more of an impact than I can do working for a startup. And this is where we see it. In terms of 5 years time, you know, we would love to start building this ecosystem that I was talking about at the start. I see CoLab as almost part of this movement where we bring together loads of really great people who care about education, who care about making a difference in the space. We almost form this marketplace where parents, educators, schools can go to and say, look, I currently see this gap in my school, and I know that this program is vetted, it's good, it's amazing. Yeah, let's make that happen. And I think that that's really powerful because if you can start to do that, kids have more choice, schools have more choice, and I think we just help make the whole journey a better place.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And it is a good tie back to my conversation with Mark Delora. We did talk about that, right? In a kind of a marketplace, because you have the same thing on the educational game side in the broader marketplace. There's so many single solutions and it's so much work, right? You say trying to get into a school and yeah. So let's talk about kind of scaling, because one of the challenges you have, right, is your facilitators,
Mhm.
right? These are facilitated, programs. So there's a person in there, an adult, kind of guiding the students through this Socratic questioning kind of thing. So how do you kind of scale up there? How do you get more facilitators geared up?
It's incredibly hard. So we have a 12-to-2 ratio, so 12 kids, two facilitators. And these facilitators are amazing at what they do. You know, they come from different backgrounds, but they all have some sort of teaching experience. Some are actors and actresses, some have been magicians, some are, you know, exec coaches, some are, you know, homeschool parents. But to find them has been really difficult because their job is not to teach, the job is to coach. And you need to have that patience, that ability to use Socratic questioning. And obviously, this is what we can teach these, you know, facilitators, and this is the skill we can give them, and we can train them up with. I think the key thing is being able to connect with kids, having that ability to sort of inspire them, because what half of what we do is to build the curriculum and to build the games, to build the challenges and the platform. The other half is to bring that to life. And if you can't do that in a session,
Hmm.
it falls flat. So we've interviewed, I'd say close to 150 people. We've hired four facilitators. And I'm not, you know, it's just really hard to find that blend of caring, that blend of being able to connect with the students, but also having that skill set. And really, we're being hard on ourselves and these facilitators because we care about the student experience. We want the kids to have the best time with us, and we want to help these kids. And we know that actually it all starts from the people that work there. I know this from synthesis, and I knew that look, if we're going to get to that level, we need to have these amazing people on that journey. And you know, these facilitators aren't just facilitators, right? They're also helping us build curriculum, coming up with these different challenges and using their experiences from their life. Because I think, like you said, everyone can bring some really great ideas to the table. It's how we fit that into the curriculum. Um, Luckily for us, our job is not to scale as fast as possible. Our job is to grow intentionally. We've always said that as soon as we hit 300 kids, we're going to stop, we're going to pause, we're going to reinvent everything that we've done and make it better and then go again.
Hmm.
So, you know, it's not like because we're doing this as a hobby as well, we don't need to pay the bills, we don't need to pay ourselves any money to do this. We're doing this because we care. So, you know, do we need to scale to 1,000, 2,000 kids? I would like to, but I would like to do that only if we can do it and maintain the quality.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
So if you know any
yeah.
good facilitators, Eric, just put me in touch.
Yeah. Well, no, that's interesting. Yeah, obviously the challenge you've got there is the ones who are really good at it are probably already doing something,
Mhm.
with kids. So you gotta, but I'm thinking there's got to be, retirees, retired teachers who it would be fabulous at this. So kind of think
I
about that.
think
Cool.
the
Yeah.
circus would be a great place, actually. You're working with,
Retired
or
clowns.
this, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's one of the facilitators that we work with. She works at Disney, and she has this ability to just bring any story to life. And it's
Yeah.
amazing. Anything she touches, I think she's got that Disney training, just turns it to something so mesmerizing that it captures the kids. We had this story about these luma foxes, these foxes that basically would emit this sort of dust, and with that, it would keep the island going. And their population was dwindling, and you had to make decisions as a group to save them. The kids at the end are like, I know this isn't real, but I wish they were real.
Uh,
And it's just because the facilitator was able to bring it to life.
yep. Yeah. No, that's great. So the other, thought that I have, what I would think is a skill you want in these facilitators too, is the ability to really observe the dynamics there and improve the design, right?
Mhm.
So what's working, what isn't working, and because every game, right, it's a work in progress, right? You're always looking for ways to fine tune, say, bring them to life, whatever.
Mhm.
And I would think that your facilitators are in that key interaction, right? They're observing the kids playing the game, and so their ability to come up with ideas and try things and really
What?
refine is important.
Yeah, absolutely. What's really surprised me is that children learn so quick, and they're always able to think up ways to break something that you've built. They just do something that just isn't what and not you would normally do. And we play test and we iterate all these challenges. We put ourselves in the kids' shoes and we try to play these challenges in that respect. But we always find that someone else in a live challenge will figure out, actually this doesn't work, or this is a loophole, or actually I can do this. So we take all that feedback and we iterate our challenges throughout. What you see during week 1 will be very different to week 10. But actually, that's also part of it, right? Because we have so many classes, if we notice one thing, one is going to impact them on all of them. And so, again, it really helps to have that free dialogue, not just from the students, but also from the facilitators, so that we can actually make everything as good as it can be. Which reminds me, we need to do more of that. So it's just about finding time, because we have a global team. Trying to find a time zone, an hour that works for everyone is
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's tough. Just another thought too is your kids they're what, from 7 to 14 or something? Yeah. So is it possible that some of those teenagers come back as facilitators? So
I love that you asked this question, because it's something we're starting to offer our graduates. They come back as junior facilitators, and they start to, because they've been on the other side, they start to, you know, use the skills that they've learned, but on the facilitating side. And it's amazing to see them do it, because they know the answer to some of these challenges. They know, and it's so tempting to give them away, but they're having to sort of say, oh, what do you think? Why do you think that? And because of the age gap is smaller, they almost act as mentors, which is really amazing to see. And it's just really inspiring to see them passing on their knowledge and their experience. We had one of our Australian students run, well, he was a teaching assistant for that challenge. And he was just, we should hire him, really.
yeah.
And we were telling his mum about this. We said, look, we would really like him to be a junior facilitator. Obviously, we have to work out what works, with labor laws and everything else. But his mum said, I don't care about the money. I just want him to volunteer, because actually it's really great on the CV. It's a really great experience for his personal development. And actually, he enjoys doing it. So we're like, okay.
Yeah. Beautiful. Work out something like that, because I'm sure it is of benefit to these kids. And if
Mhm,
they've really enjoyed the program and they, you know, done
mhm.
it for a few years, yeah, the chance for them to kind of give back to the program too and say, yeah, I can do this, and they get volunteer credit or whatever, or internship kind of thing. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it, right? If we can create more opportunities for these kids, then they start to learn more, they have more chances to learn. I love that idea, Eric. It's
Yeah.
great that we're not just being crazy thinking about this. There's someone else thinking this could work.
Yeah. No, well, it's a common thing in education and training facilities too. One of my other startups was a coding boot camp thing. We had the same problem. Our absolute limiting factor was instructors. And the tempting thing to do is to take some of your best students and then
Mhm.
groom them to become instructors. And it's very challenging in that particular area because you really want somebody who's been out and working and has that
Yeah.
experience to really teach coding. But many of the training facilities do that. They bring back some of their best students, go off for a year, get your working experience, and then come back and teach. So anyway,
Love it.
anything else? We're at about an hour in. This has been a great conversation. We covered a lot of ground. Anything you want to
No,
add? Last words
thank
of
you for having
wisdom?
me. No, I mean, I would say that if anyone's listening, a young person's listening, just embrace those opportunities, say yes, go out there and explore. Don't see it as a failure, bounce back from it, learn from it. I think Eric, you and I are great examples of how it can turn out. So, that would be a really good thing to take away.
Yes. Be brave. Go do. All right. Well, thank you for being brave and for the fact that you're committed to doing this. And it's not about money. I love the kind of honor of what you're doing there to putting the kids first. And we need this. We need more people doing what you're doing because there are gaps in what traditional education is doing for us. We got to fill those gaps somehow. So
I'm sure we
awesome.
can do it together. Thank you so much, Eric.
Yes.
I
All
appreciate
right.
you.
Thank you, Alan. Alan Tang is a servant leader. He's not doing what he does for his own benefit, right? He's one of those unique and rare individuals who, he has a vision that's greater than his own needs. He's helping kids to find their confidence and to, develop their ability to communicate and work well together. This is incredibly important, and it's his mission now. But it's not easy. In fact, it's hard. And despite the fact that it's hard, they're having success. And I hope that, their success inspires others to try step by step, little by little. It's work like what the folks at, CoLab with, Alan Tang are doing that makes education better. This is what we have to do, right? And this is just one example of many of innovation in education that you're going to see on this show. So please, if you haven't already subscribed, we've got a ton of great guests lined up, more incredible stories of innovation in education you don't want to miss. All right, I'm Eric Byron. Thanks for listening to the Education Innovators Podcast. Thanks for all those education innovators out there. You are making a difference.